So brokers should never take it lightly when they submit a deal because somebody is investing not just the funds that they're earmarking for that deal, but the time to underwrite it. And if your efficiency ratios are below 50% and you're not going to fund most of the deals that you submit, you're a waste of time for that partner. So that's a big focus, as I've mentioned many times for us. But if we can do more efficient business for our lender partners, then it's money in their pocket, which can mean money in the broker's pocket, which can mean lower rates for the client.
Thanks for tuning in to the Canadian Private Lenders Podcast, the show about starting a private lender in Canada, the mortgage industry, and the real estate industry. Your hosts are Neil Andrino and Ryan McNeil. Enjoy.
All right, everybody, welcome back. It's episode 60 of the Canadian Private Lenders Podcast with your hosts, Ryan and Neil. Neil, how you making out today, buddy?
Good as always.
Yeah?
Looking forward to a fun day ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy one.
Yeah.
And we've got a very special guest joining us today. We're thrilled to mention, or to welcome, I should say, Veronica Love, Chief Revenue Officer of TMG, the Mortgage Group Canada, past Chair of Mortgage Professionals Canada as well. Veronica has over 15 years experience spanning both the brokerage and lender sides, and Veronica has become a cornerstone in the Canadian mortgage industry. She's actively involved in numerous committees and boards and is a passionate advocate for this great industry. Simply put, Veronica is one of the most recognized and respected names in the Canadian mortgage space. In fact, if you simply mention the name V and to anyone in the business, they're going to know exactly who you mean. We're excited to dive into her incredible career path and her secrets to success. Veronica, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
so
great to
thrilled
have
to
you.
be here today.
Absolutely. All right, Neil, should we jump right into it?
Yeah, good to see you again. Last time I saw you, we were shooting tequila in Montreal.
We're going right there.
Yeah, 100%.
That's funny that I don't remember that.
Just a standard,
tequila has that effect, I guess.
Standard MPC national night, I guess. So, especially in Montreal, that was quite the time.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Nice introduction to MPC for you, Neil.
Yeah, that might be the last time I go. I think my body can handle that anymore.
It's a grind, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It feels like a job after the days are over and you head home.
Yeah, I think after the first night.
But you know what? You never regret going to that conference. I don't think I've missed it since I went the first time. So it's always a blast. And I'm sure we're going to get into that, but we got a busy day ahead. Mm-hmm. So really want to dive in first, Veronica, on your career path. Okay. So I know you've got a very interesting path. And always want to kind of understand how people came into the great industry we're in, right? So can you kind of walk us through how you came into the space and a bit about your background?
Yeah, I love that question too, because I think this is an industry that I wish I knew about when I was in my 20s. So I get very excited when I see people that are younger coming into the business, but I never would have guessed that I'd be here. My background is PR and marketing. I specifically went into PR and marketing because as a teenager, as a youth, I would think that finance would be the last world I would have gone into. And I was working, for the Toronto Maple Leafs and doing, I know, and working in, sports marketing. I did a lot of charitable work. I worked for a lot of health charities and did a lot of their marketing and events. Then I got headhunted from the Leafs actually to Royal LePage. And I went and worked for Royal LePage Real Estate at their head office for 8 years. And I was doing marketing and events for them and working with the franchises very closely. And one of my franchise owners approached me and he was starting a mortgage company. And I didn't really realize I was being worked on, but he worked on me for about 3 years, kept asking, how happy are you? Of course I was happy. I mean, I worked for Royal LePage. I still love that organization and love everybody I got to work with there. But it was time for a change and he lured me over to the mortgage world.
Cool.
No way.
Wow. That's so interesting. I don't think I knew that you were with the Maple Leafs before. And Neil always loves when I veer off and talk about the Maple Leafs on this podcast too. So we'll circle back to that later, maybe at the end of the podcast. But that's super interesting. Really, really cool. Just moving right along here. So one great piece of advice I got early on in the industry was to make yourself visible. And there's no one I know in the industry who's more visible than you. You don't miss any events that I've been to, and I know you've got a crazy travel schedule this time of year as well. But what advice would you have for those new to the industry, and being visible and to increase your odds of success coming into the industry?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I did that from day one. And I don't think I strategically knew that I was doing it, but I've just had a lot of success because it's like going to the gym. You wake up in the morning, you might not want to go, but every single time I've gone to the gym, I've always been happy I did.
Yep.
That's how I feel about attending industry events. Every single event I've ever gone to, I've met somebody new or learned something new, met a contact that could benefit me or might help me benefit somebody else. I'm the master introducer. I love to connect people. But if you're not out and present at these events, you have no idea the missed opportunities
Sure.
that you could be missing out on. And so I got, when I joined the mortgage industry, not knowing anybody, so it can be very scary, I started volunteering for the associations and getting involved in their events as fast as possible as an attendee. But then I just started saying, I'll help you at registration desk. I'll volunteer for this golf tournament. Anything that I could do, whether it's stuffing tote bags or working reg desk, it's a great opportunity to meet people both on the committee side and the board side, and then also all the attendees.
I was going to ask, but I think you kind of answered it already. For the young people listening, because again, to your point, I think there is more younger brokers starting now, which is exciting.
Very exciting.
And I say it to a lot of them, like, I think you're making a better decision than becoming a realtor. And any of my realtor friends out there and myself, I wish I got become a mortgage broker. I think it's a more scalable business and better long-term decision. But anyways, for a young person going to these events, what would be your suggestion in networking and getting in front of people? Because I think that's a tough part for a lot of people that go to them. They are fairly overwhelming. Like, I know, being new to industry, I walked into MPC and I'm like, all right, this is a room of like 600 people that I don't know. And I'm fairly new here. And so I'm just going to go ahead and randomly shake hands. You made suggestion of offering your services or your time, which is always, I think, an easy way to get a hold of somebody. But
yeah, if you have a role to play at the event, it's much easier to meet people than just being an attendee. If I didn't get the opportunity to be of service at that event, I would definitely be branded. So I like to show up with my Yeti, show up with some kind of swag. I had a little trick where I wore a name badge to everything, long past the time where people actually already knew my name. And people would start to poke at it and go, you don't have to wear a name badge. We know who you are. But it's not true, because every single event I go to, I would meet somebody else. And when you have a name badge on, so $11 metal name badge that you can get produced anywhere, Staples or any provider, Vistaprint, I'm sure, does them. You wear it and people immediately see your name and then feel a connection and will comment on it. And then a little strategic thing I started doing, I was by accident at first and now very purposeful. When I leave the industry event, I also continue to wear my name badge to the drugstore, to Canada Post, to the grocery store. And because then I found connections from the pharmacist and from the cashier saying, oh my gosh, Veronica, what do you do? What's, TMG or whatever name badge I was wearing. And then I would get to explain and a conversation would start. So both within the industry and outside, I just found it's the biggest tip. I always tell new realtors or mortgage brokers, wear your name badge everywhere. It will start conversations. It's like a walking billboard and a walking business card. But people do want to converse and connect, and it just gives them an opportunity to connect. And people don't forget your name that way too.
It's a nice icebreaker.
I wish everybody wore name badges because I'm not great with names. So I wish everybody would do it all the time.
Absolutely. Or the person you've seen once or twice before. And, when you go to that MPC conference, right? You see it and you're like, oh, there's their name. Thank God I don't have to
and those
look it
darn
up on the
lanyards, they hang down too low. Right? So this is always on my lapel.
I like it.
Like a lapel pin. And it's the same reason a lot of people will wear a lapel pin with their brand. It's a conversation starter and it just gives people recognition right away.
Love it.
Makes sense.
Neil, alternatively, you can just go offer tequila shots to someone you want to meet in the industry.
Next time I'm going to walk around the bottle. And just
Speaking of that, so we just recently returned from another fantastic MPC national conference. I know you've had a long history with MPC, which is really cool. So you were vice chair and then chair, correct?
Yes.
And then can you kind of talk about that? And then I know MPC's had a big impact on my career since coming into the industry and just the educational piece there and support for elevating the industry as a whole. So can you kind of talk about the importance of that in Canada?
Absolutely. I mean, anybody who disparages associations, I don't think has ever participated or been involved. Both in the real estate and the mortgage industry, associations are so important. And I think other industries have displayed this. The insurance industry, associations are fighting battles for our industry and our clients every single day. But until you get involved, you might not see the hard work that is being done, but I can attest to it. And obviously, first it was volunteering for these associations. But when you volunteer, you get to hear the behind the scenes conversations, the work that goes into it. It might just appear as a networking event, but there is so much going on that can give us credentials in our space. And so I volunteered, got to see behind the scenes a little bit, and wanted to help more. I'm known to elevate the voice of any organization I work for. So that's my way in giving back to this industry, is to do it in a volunteer capacity where I'm not getting paid. And I did it both with the Provincial Association. I was the executive director of Simba, Ontario for a short period of time after volunteering for them for many years. And then with MPC, it was volunteering to get onto the board. So through the election process. And then when I got on the board, you can actually run for the executive, which is secretary, treasurer, vice chair. Traditionally, people usually serve a full term before they do that. I like to fast track anything I do. So I got some, feedback from some previous board members that were like, you're rushing it, you're doing it too fast. But I wanted to get my hands dirty right away and support in that way. I also felt females were underrepresented on the board. I'm only the fourth female chair in 28 years.
Wow.
So now we actually have a woman in place right now too, Barbara Cook. So she's our fifth in 30 years. So it's not enough, but I'm very happy that I got to play my role in that part. So that's why I fast-tracked mine, because I felt like it was time, and it was time for my voice, and I could really advocate for membership and for everything that the board is doing. It was a very important time with both the pandemic and then also new mortgage rules coming into play that we had to take government relations to another level. So I'm very happy that I was able to participate in that and do lobby days in Ottawa and at Queen's Park and really get in front of some of our MPs and members of parliament and advocate on the importance of mortgage brokers for consumers.
Super cool.
It's super cool. Yeah. It's what would you say to someone is a good reason to join the associations or to make the volunteering effort? I know for me now, I look at it a little bit differently, but definitely when I was younger, I was very selfish in the fact that if I didn't see a direct benefit, I probably wouldn't have made the effort to be involved with some of those. I don't know if you have a story of something specific that happened, you think, from meeting someone that ultimately turned into X, or if you think in general it has a huge value. But I don't know if you could maybe put a finger on what you think would be the best benefits for someone trying
Absolutely.
to be involved.
And when I'm trying to show the benefit, I always like to get to know the person on the other side, because everybody sees benefits differently.
Yeah.
So, really selfishly, it's clout.
Yeah.
Okay. We're all trying to carve out some kind of credibility in our space so that our clients trust us with the largest financial transaction that they're going to take, place in their life space. And how do we do that without building some credentials? This is a really fantastic way to do it.
Yeah.
To spend some time advocating for our industry gives you a platform if you utilize it on your social media and you talk about it and educate your consumers on what you're doing to help them get into a mortgage easier or qualify easier. Again, your elevation, your clout goes up dramatically. Unselfishly, it's the education.
Yep.
The education that every single time I go to a symposium or I attend one of their webinars, I learn something every single time. But you only get what you put into things. And some people who are walking around this world saying that there's nothing in it for me, I feel like their eyes and ears are not open. They're not paying attention. They're not coming with the right attitude into an industry event or into that space to get what they need out of it. But like anything, it's what you put into it. And I always try and show up at every event, no matter how tired I am or how much I go, I don't know if this is going to be a good use of my time. I will find something to benefit me at that event. Otherwise, it is a waste of time.
Yep.
So you have to go in with that mindset of finding something that's going to benefit you.
That makes sense. Cool. I end up attending a lot of events because I'm in a part of a couple different industries. And a few of my friends are always like, oh, why are you doing that? That's a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. But that's always my mindset. There's always something to learn or someone to meet in that space. And it really has panned out like that. I feel like I go into them with low expectations, and then I go to a couple presentations, and there might be things that I already feel like I'm very knowledgeable on, but someone's perspective or different take on it, or they have one little tidbit that's a huge value piece. I feel like they know who they are, but they would be listening anyways because they don't want to learn anymore.
True. And you have different messages are differently received depending on the day. You can hear the same message like 4 times, and then all of a sudden one day you have an aha moment.
Yeah.
And I think that is, for all those educators out there, all those trainers, all those facilitators, broker owners, don't get frustrated. Sometimes people need to hear things a couple times before it matters to them. And it might matter for different reasons on different days.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll resonate for something different. Before we swap into the business side, I was going to ask one more question because you touched on this with social media.
Yeah.
We don't have it on here, but would you say you're a strong believer in social media for like any broker to have and market themselves at this point in time?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the number one way I was able to make a name for myself in this industry.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't come from a bank background. Traditionally, everybody in my space has worked at the bank branch, worked their way up through this industry. I don't have a financial background. I've never worked at a bank before. Now, at least I have a lender under my belt, but that came with a lot of hard work of connecting in this industry. If it wasn't for my social media presence, I wouldn't have got the job that I did at the lender I did. I was hired for my clout, for the relationships I had built, not for my financial acumen. It wasn't for that at all, not for my credit experience. I had to learn that on the job. But that is the number one reason that I have the positions that I've been offered in this industry or, the reputation at MPC. It's definitely the social media. I always say it's not necessarily going to make you money. As a realtor or a mortgage broker, you can't just post something on Facebook and then go, I don't understand it. Why aren't the deals flowing in? It's like anything. It's the consistency that pays off. And it's a social environment. I always say this because some people will come up to me at conferences and they'll know my dog's name and my kids' names and they'll know where I live. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever connected with you on social media. And they're like, oh no, I'm a stalker. I just stalk. And I said, I think you're missing the point. It's social media. So when I put something out there, if you like it, comment in the moment so that we can start a dialogue and have a conversation. I mean, I still love the benefit of bumping into them at a conference and then getting a real-time conversation. But I think some people miss the mark on social media and it's free.
I think majority do. I think there's a weird culture associated with it where most people don't engage or interact and most people are creeping.
Yes.
But I like your definition as a self-proclaimed clout hire.
Yes. Way back, I'm going to date myself now, but there used to actually be a thing called Clout Score. And it was when Facebook was, relatively new. Instagram, I'm trying to remember. TikTok was definitely not around, but Twitter and Facebook, I think were the metrics, maybe a little bit of Instagram. And it pulled all of your followers, but engagement mattered the most.
Yeah.
So the number of conversations, not necessarily the likes.
Yeah.
And back in the day, shout out to the Kilted Broker. I think Kilted Broker, Cindy Freeman and myself, who had the highest clout scores in the mortgage industry.
Nice.
Remember, I didn't come from anything with any background in this industry. It shouldn't have been me.
Yeah.
So it's very possible for any individual that's entering this space to grow in reputation right away if they do it strategically.
And like you said, too, it's not necessarily that the leads are going to come flying in. It's more about building your personal brand and building trust with your audience.
Yeah.
Right?
Relationships that I built 10 years ago are just now coming to fruition for me now. And I mean, here's the thing about me. I don't do anything with the end game, right? I don't say I'm going to have this conversation today because it's going to benefit me financially. My mind isn't wired that way. I'd probably be a much richer person if I was actually wired that way. But for me, it's, I lay my head down on my pillow at night and I think about the relationships I built or the connections I provided to other people. But the beautiful thing that I've come to see is that 10 years later, relationships will call me and say, hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I'm wondering if you could help me out with something. And, usually the result in us doing business in some fashion. So it can be frustrating because we're in an environment of like, I want to go to the gym and have abs instantly. I want to start a diet and a week later see weight loss. We all want instant gratification, but the long game is definitely fun too. It's fun to see how things come around again.
Very cool.
I'm a strong believer. It's the long game.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be making the ask on the first hangout.
Before we go into the Ontario market here, Neil, I just wanted to have one more comment there. I'm glad you mentioned about elevating the presence of women in the industry, and it's super cool to see women in the mortgage industry, which I know you've had a big hand in as well. Everybody's on a level playing field in this industry, so it's just it's very impressive to see how far this has come. And one comment I wanted to mention as well, that we're 60 episodes into this podcast. Our two most listened to shows were Sarah Albert from Premier and Michelle Drover with Premier, and I have no doubt that this will be in the top 3 as well. So it goes a long way.
Women for the win. I love it. Those are two incredible women.
Absolutely.
You brought up WIMI, and this is another, really great tip for somebody who's trying to carve out, a reputation or anything. When WIMI was founded, the two organizers of WIMI reached out to me because they did know I had some social media followers. And so they definitely tap into me to help invite people to WIMI. So I went through my Rolodex on social media and started to invite all these women over. But what I also did was started to write underwriting tips. And so here's a funny thing. I've never underwritten. And at that time, I wasn't even a licensed mortgage agent, and I had never processed a mortgage. But here I was writing tips. What I did was I had just started at a lender, and I was learning every single day. So I took any little tidbit I learned and I put it out there on WIMI. And it was called, WIMI Underwriting Tips. And at first I was like, I don't know how this will be received. It's very vulnerable when you start to put out content because I thought, is this, too condescending? Because some of the followers of WIMI have been brokering for 25 plus years. But what I came to find was that even those women who had been brokering for 25 years didn't know a lot of things, especially the behind the scenes of the credit side and underwriting side. So some of these tips I was sharing, they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that mattered. And it's a weird industry we have when the people processing the deals into the lenders, and I see a lot of nodding here because you've probably underwritten some of these files.
Yep.
And then from very experienced brokers where you're like, what is this mess that I'm getting? Why are you presenting it this way? Why are you telling the story this way? Or why are there so many missing components? So I became very, and I gathered from others. So I started making calls to other people. I called credit people, credit managers. I called underwriters. I called other brokers. What's the biggest tip you've learned? What's the biggest frustration you see from files that come across your desk? And then I would turn that into a tip on WIMI. So again, was I getting paid for that? I was not. Did it take up a lot of my time? It did. I was always curating content. I was always researching content, and I was sharing. And some of them hit the mark more than others, but I did that for quite a long time, and it was very, very well received. So it also bloomed into a presentation I did because I was always on the brokering side, and I could never understand why deals fell apart, especially on Fridays. Friday fires, right? And I was like, why are so many deals falling apart? And I always blamed the lender, okay? Until I became a lender. And then I realized, oh my goodness, it's the broker. I was fiercely protecting these brokers for so long, but we kept making mistakes that should have been so easy to fix for a smoother transaction. And also 99% of deals that fall apart are poor communication. So, the client didn't tell all the story to the broker didn't disseminate all the story to the underwriter only knows what they can know, but they might have missed a doc or missed a communication or forgot to communicate back. Anyways, when you dissect a deal that's fallen apart, 99.9% of the time, it's a missed communication. So communication is so key in our space. So I love sharing that tip, and that came about with a presentation called What Your Underwriter Really Says About You Behind Your Back. And I presented it again, volunteerism at MPC as a symposium roadshow across the country. And again, I was a little vulnerable, wondering, will people even value this content? Am I going to be like telling them something they already know? But so many brokers came to the stage afterwards and were like, oh my gosh, I do that. And I'm like, what part? Because it was just a million examples of like things you shouldn't do or trends that brokers do that underwriters wish that they did better. And they were like, all of it. And I'm like, well, for the love of God, stop doing it. Like if you learn anything today, we all just fix these little things, we wouldn't have the congestion in the queue. We wouldn't have slower turnaround time. We're always demanding this, service level from our underwriting partners, from our lenders. But like, what could we do to make it better? So I love taking anything I learn, and this is my biggest advice to realtors or to mortgage brokers. If you're trying to build your reputation with your clients and grow your social media, grow your clout, educate first. Educational marketing is probably one that has benefited me the most.
Yeah.
I would tend to agree heavily. I mean, that's what I lean. We were talking about that before we turned on the mics. I think that is an easy way to provide it, because I think a lot of people are like, well, the other options are like be funny. So if you're not naturally
Yes.
funny and or prepared to film funny content, and you run a very high risk there of making a fool of yourself.
Right.
So going educational is an easy way to provide some people with value and break into it, and then slowly start to maybe add whatever your own flavor is to it as you go.
And be real. I mean,
Exactly.
part of my presentation said, "Don't be an asshole," and then explaining what an asshole was, and putting up some funny examples and having some fun with the fact that we might be missing things. People remember laughs more than anything. They don't love lectures, right?
Yep.
So I didn't want the presentation to come across as a lecture. I wanted it to come across as like, here's some of the dumb things we do that we could make our life easier if we didn't do them. Yeah. And it was much more memorable that way.
Yeah. I've seen you do that presentation before, Veronica, and it's not just the brokers who are benefiting from that. It's fun to look around at the lenders in the room who are mouthing thank you to you as you go through it. So,
well, part of it is the Jerry Maguire, like, help me help you.
Yeah.
And I always get all the partners in the room, from the insurer partners to, title partners to all the BDMs and the underwriters to stand up and just for brokers to take a moment to appreciate them, because I've been on that side. Yeah. Brokers think BDM's job and underwriters' jobs are easy. BDMs and underwriters think brokers' jobs are easy. Until you've done both, nobody's job is easy. Yeah. Everybody's job has challenges. Until you get to play both of those roles, which I got the opportunity to do, you don't understand everybody's world. And until you understand everybody's world, it's really hard to be empathetic and also to build those relationships in a meaningful way.
What's an asshole?
An asshole is somebody who continue to ask for things that they don't deserve. I'll give you an example. A broker who's continually asking for exceptions, but also pulls deals for the lowest rate at the last minute and doesn't fund with you. So has the worst funding ratio, but continues to ask for benefits, or continues to ask the same question over and over again, never retaining the information. But really the asshole part comes from knowing that a relationship has to have two beneficial sides. It has to be a win-win. If you're going to go to a lender's party at MPC and drink their tequila shots and eat their hors d'oeuvres, you better repay them with a deal afterwards, or at least refer them or recommend them or do something. This is such a fun way to build your reputation too, is to refer other people. Right? In the mortgage space, as a brand new mortgage broker, I always encourage people who have no sphere of influence to start representing all the local businesses in their marketplace. Talk about the local bakery. Talk about, the local hairdresser. Feature them on your social media. Build up their clout before you build your own. Give before you receive. It's always going to benefit you. But in the ask-cool environment, it's like, if you're going to ask for those, out-of-the-box exceptions on every single deal, you better be sure that your deals are squeaky clean, packaged well, you don't pull deals, they fund, and you look after your credit people as well.
I'm calling a few people after this, letting them know that they're assholes.
You want to go into market update, Neil?
Yeah. So we'll get back on track here now. And so we spend all of our time in Atlantic market. We talk about it. Obviously, we're surrounded by it. And I feel like it operates maybe a little bit separate from the rest of the country. We probably have like our West Coast marketplace, Ontario marketplace, and Atlantic. We have our perspective of Ontario. I feel like when you don't live there, it's like propaganda that you see from every different place. Living in Ontario and Toronto, or I guess Aurora, could you give us an update on what's going on there on the mortgage side, real estate side? Just where's the market at?
Sure. Well, I mean, here's the great thing. Nobody understands or even knows where I live because I travel so much. A lot of people think I live in BC. Some people, think I live in Alberta. I don't really identify as an Ontarian. I was born in Calgary and fun fact, I moved 21 times before I was in grade 5.
Oh my God.
Most of them were through Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario, and a lot in southwestern Ontario. So I'm not a GTA girl at all.
Okay.
I've now lived in Aurora for quite some time. My children have grown up there. So I should start calling it home, but I don't think of it as home yet. But the Ontario marketplace is a beast. I am in a national role, so I look across the country at all of the marketplaces. Very, very empathetic for the GTA market and the GVA market. It's had a hard go. I love not only working in small marketplaces, but helping brokers market in small marketplaces. It is much more of a reciprocal relationship than working in a GTA environment where you're only as good as your last transaction.
Yeah.
And that comes from every side. I think as a lender, they have it harder in that marketplace because brokers have so many lenders.
Mhm.
They have so many partners. So they're a little bit spoiled. They're spoiled with presentations, with education, with content, with parties, with, all sides of that side. So they definitely, rate shop a little bit more or identify with product quicker. When you're in a smaller marketplace, you have more value as a partner because they need you more. And so the marketplace in Ontario has been a beast, especially lately. Some of the mortgage rule changes that are coming into play are definitely going to benefit that area. So, an increase in the mortgage amount will definitely help because that's put us out of scope at the $1 million mark. I mean, in Aurora, you can't buy a townhouse for less than $1 million right now.
Wow.
So things I'm glad I did was buy into the Aurora market 17 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
And things I'm very fortunate about. But Ontario is a beast too because we have so many small market areas that very much look like Atlantic Canada.
Yeah.
So when you get out of that Greater Toronto area, it kind of feels like Atlantic Canada.
Yeah,
Cool.
I could believe that. Do you expect the year coming to be strong then? You're saying it's a beast. I think like you said, there were some hard times over the last maybe 12 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess with recent rate cuts, you think you're seeing volume pick back up and kind of pep in the step for everybody back in
I do.
industry?
I mean, people in Ontario and BC are feeling much more optimistic for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the fact that I get to work for a company that has every market area because we very much have rode the coattails of Atlantic Canada, Quebec, especially Quebec's been on fire,
Mhm.
the prairies. When I was a lender, those were my favorite marketplaces to work with.
Yeah.
They had the strongest performance, the best efficiencies, the most loyal partners.
Hmm.
I mean, I have a soft spot for Atlantic Canada forever because of that. And that's part of the reason I joined TMG is they were one of my clients. I got to see how every company performed. I got to see how everybody behaved. And they by far were my favorite brokers. The loyalty, the relationship building, they really understood there has to be a win-win on both sides of the lender-broker relationships. And the efficiencies are just through the roof at TMG. These brokers know what they're doing. When they submit a deal to a lender, they've already done their due diligence on whether that deal is a fit for that lender. They've done their homework. And that's very true, especially of Atlantic Canada and the
Mhm.
prairies. The prairies follow suit, very similar to Atlantic Canada. And I think it's also because you know your clients better. There's more of a connection here. More of that small town mentality really comes into play, which makes it so much easier.
How have you seen the growth in Alberta?
Have we seen growth in
Or
Alberta?
I guess what's it looking like in Alberta? I feel like
Yeah.
that would be a huge growth market right now, is it not?
Huge.
Yeah.
For us, especially at TMG, it's one of our strongest marketplaces right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do this friendly thing called the Cup, the TMG Cup. And it's not necessarily intended for our brokers, but it's intended for the management team.
Yeah.
And so we have a little friendly competition among the provinces. Alberta's been winning the Cup quite often. So it's strong, but the competition is usually between Atlantic Canada, the prairies, and Alberta.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those are the strongest marketplaces. But, Quebec's been a huge market for us. We partnered with a company and we absorbed our TMG agents into that company and we absorbed their agents into us in Ontario. And it's been one of our biggest wins, I think, is finding these mutually beneficial alignments. So we have the co-brokerage model as well. A lot of people don't know that about us. But when we have that alignment that works, like-minded people that like to conduct business in a similar fashion to us, it goes gangbuster. But the Quebec market has been incredible.
Interesting.
That was a great segue into let's go into TMG here. So obviously one of the top brokerages in the country, especially out here in Atlantic Canada, big time player out here. So I met you close to 10 years ago when you were on the lender side, like you mentioned, with Merrick's back in the day. So what attracted you to leave the lender side? And I know you alluded to it already, but why TMG as a brokerage?
Well, I definitely miss the broker side. Shout out to the lenders. That's the hardest job I think there is in this industry. So kudos to you for hanging in there so long. It can be very transactional, and there's so many factors that come into play that affect your world. But I really missed helping brokers build their business. I mean, back to my marketing roots and back to my business building roots. That's where I really shined, and I put all of that into Merrick's for sure. I love to find really good brands that already have a strong foundation and grow them from there. And I think TMG had a lot in common with Merrick's, both really strong brands that were doing everything humbly right, but not really bragging about it. And I love partners like that. And so TMG was definitely that. We're about to celebrate our 35th anniversary this year. And 35 years in this mortgage space is nothing to laugh about. Shout out to our founders, Debbie and Grant Thomas, who are very involved still to this day, 35 years later. They became mortgage brokers, joined a firm, hated the lack of transparency and not understanding where their commissions were driven from or how things were put together. And so rather than complain about it, they did something about it and built a brand. And the reason that their formula has been so successful, and we talked about the long game, is they've been in the long game. They could have modified their model over the years to follow suit to so many other models, but they chose not to because the brokers that joined them 35 years ago, they made a promise to them and they stayed true to it for 35 years. So they could have added additional fees. They could have added, royalties. They could have added desk fees or ad fund fees or whichever they want to do, just like a lot of our competitors do, but they didn't because they made a promise. And in this day and age, not many people stay true to those promises, especially after 35 years, especially when there's money on the line. But I think it's a really good example of a company that you can still make money, but not gouge your end customer. And our brokers are our customers. And we just, again, it's the long game. How can we help them do more business accidentally while they still carve out work-life balance and they're not gouged for it? And that's what we wake up every single day and try to do.
How big is your team on the corporate side?
We have 58 employees that service our brokers across the country. Yeah, and we're 1,500 plus agents across the country now, coast to coast. We're in every single province.
Yeah.
And we love that. And like I said, some provinces are so strong, even though they're lesser in numbers, their volumes and their efficiencies are through the roof. We rely on them so steadily, especially in a country where different marketplaces have highs and lows at different times. So that's been a big win. But yeah, we still continue to attract brokers every single day. I think that, as I mentioned, they've been humble to a fault. Me joining over the past 5 years, I've been there 5 years now. I've tried to take it up a notch, but also very consciously not grow too big. So our mission is not to be the biggest. We will never be the biggest, but that's very strategic. It's to align with people that actually get it and want to be professional and want to look after their clients and value everything that we put out. We put out a lot of training, a lot of development. We don't host it just for the sake of saying we host meetings and training. We host it because we want them to become better so that there's less risk for us and they're servicing their clients in the way that they should service them. And because we want to be the lender's favorite partner. That's our main goal. You know what? Just like a broker can replace a client very, very easily, you can't replace a lender. Our lender partners are number one, and we have to look after our lender partners. There's a lot of them now in some marketplaces more than others, but without them, we're dead in the water. So we really, really value our relationship with our lender partners.
That makes sense.
Cool.
Nice.
So you were recently promoted to Chief Revenue Officer at TMG. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very cool.
Badass title.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
I want to know more about this. So...
Yeah, it's a relatively new C-suite title. And so I've had lots of questions about it. And but I think it fits for the role that I was brought into play. So 5 years ago when I was hired, it was corporate development was behind my title. And it's still corporate development. So it's very much in the same vein. What I am doing is over the past 5 years, I've looked at TMG like I look at any business when I join and evaluate where there are maybe some holes to plug. And again, to the management team, to Mark Kersner and Grant and Debbie, kudos to them because I come with a lot of ideas. And I came to their company that they have built for a long time. I've only been there 5 years. I'm a drop in the bucket. But I said, if we just tweak this or just did this or filled this position or did this, and they listened to my ideas and kept innovating. A lot of people after a long tenure won't do that. They'll say stuff like, we've always done it this way and it's worked. But they don't have that mindset. They're always innovating. And that's, I think, why the longevity exists as well. And so part of my role was to look for ways to grow the company, but also be more efficient. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. After 5 years of being able to lay the groundwork and build the company in a very strategic way that supports our brokers even more, now I can focus on the fun stuff, which is what I like to do, which is grow businesses. So that's really what the revenue side of it is.
Yeah.
It's really to look at ways that we can increase our efficiencies, help our brokers do more business. And there's a win for everybody then. TMG wins, but our brokers win as well.
Yep. Awesome.
And so you're servicing both your corporate side as well as your brokers.
Exactly.
Anywhere
And the lenders. I mean, a big part of my job is lender relationships.
Yeah.
How can I make sure that the deals we submit do fund, that their efficiencies are through the roof? I think the biggest trend, and I'd love to see this on our lender partners, focus more on efficiencies.
Yeah.
The reason our credit centers are drowning in deals is because it's inefficient business.
Yeah.
If everybody sharpened up their tools and, got deals that were more efficient, our industry would blow up. Like we'd all be more successful. The loss of revenue from the lender's perspective on underwriting deals that will never fund is dramatic. When I did that presentation, I did some, market research from partners, and most brokers don't understand that the average file costs about $1,000 to underwrite. And if you get into the alternative space, that grows. I've even heard as high as $3,000 to underwrite. So brokers should never take it lightly when they submit a deal, because somebody is investing not just the funds that they're earmarking for that deal, but the time to underwrite it. And if your efficiency ratios are below 50% and you're not going to fund most of the deals that you submit, you're a waste of time for that partner. So that's a big focus, as I've mentioned many times for us. But if we can do more efficient business for our lender partners, then it's money in their pocket, which can mean money in the broker's pocket, which can mean lower rates for the client.
Cutting out those assholes.
Cutting them out. They cost money.
Yeah, they definitely do. That's really interesting. And I guess in my head, I'm like, so what would be, where do you see this going? Like, where do you see your next step? In my head, I'm like, I think the answer is CEO, but I could be wrong.
Well, I don't know. You know what? I love the role I'm in. I think that it is totally up my alley.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a relationship builder. I like to look for efficiencies. I like to look for opportunities. You could put a lot of acronyms in that title, Chief Opportunity Officer. I've never been happier. I love my role and I love this company. And I think that, I'd love to be here for the next 35 years. I think it would be incredible to take, TMG on that journey. We have an incredible staff. Most of them are previous lenders. And I don't think that's an accident. When you get to be a lender, you get the luxury of going on the road with every single brokerage house. And you get to see every model and you get to see how the brokers conduct themselves. And then when you get to make a choice of where you want to work and you choose TMG, it's not an accident. So I also think that there's a huge benefit for our brokers when all these people come from previous lenders and we know how to fund files. We know what the lenders are looking for. We can coach a brand new broker to success faster because we have that experience behind us. So yeah, I love our staff. It's just a fun place to work. We work hard, play hard. We all have each other's backs. And that's a great place I'm very blessed to wake up every day and to get to work.
It sounds like you love it, and it's actually very impressive and interesting. So I foresee you definitely continuing to step up with TMG.
Yeah, thank you.
Lucky to have you.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but you mentioned the difficulty in identifying the perfect candidate as a TMG broker, right? So. Yes. What kind of advice would you give someone maybe early in their career who's considering a change to the broker industry?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we were talking a little bit off air and I said, I've been hiring people for over 10 years and I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing because I'll interview a broker and I'll be like, this person's going to hit it out of the park. And then they give up 6 months later. And I'm like, no, you're so good. You have all the right attributes to be successful at this. But, I've come to learn that I can't want it more than that person does. And often I get so invested in people that I do want it more than they do. And then on the other side, I'll see some people and I'll be like, oh, I don't think this is the career for you. And then they blow it out of the water. So I'm like, what do I know anymore? But I do, I like to give advice and I like to share what I know. And I think the consistency is the biggest thing. Some people have instant success in this space. Some people, it takes 2 years. And everybody's story has been a little bit different. But when that consistency starts to pay off, it's amazing. It's a most incredible career. And I'd love to see more 20-year-olds get into it. I just hired an 18-year-old.
Wow.
I know.
Cool.
And it's a bit of a challenge because very, very green. But here's the thing. I hired him because he is he's run a successful shoe company where he buys high-end sneakers and then flips them. He's now doing like a window company. He's a serial entrepreneur.
Sounds like you, Neil.
But you see this aptitude in people. And if you're willing to ask for business and tell people that you're in the mortgage space, you're already adding value to Canadians. I don't think a secret agent is ever successful. I will see some mortgage agents and I'll be like, I was on your Facebook. I can't even tell you're a mortgage agent. And they're like, oh, I don't really want to talk about it on Facebook. And I'm like, but then you get mad when your cousin does their mortgage with somebody else.
Yep.
And I said, you can't be a secret agent. As soon as you realize that Canadians actually value what you have to offer, then you're almost doing your family and friends and neighbors a disservice by not telling them how you can help them.
Yep.
And so stop thinking about it as sales and start thinking about it as value driven. And then you will always be successful.
Yep. I'm glad you mentioned that too. And that's something we maybe struggle with historically on the private lending side, right? Because it's not, it's going to be maybe 5-10% of your business versus 80% on the A side, right? So we constantly have to be educating brokers about what we do, reminding them. Same as brokers have to educate their potential clients with what they do, right? And, one meeting a year or one post every, couple months is not going to do it.
No.
You need to be constantly in front of them, reminding them. And that's kind of takes it back to the social media aspect you mentioned.
Well, and I think that's why some mortgage brokers have actually just dove into the private space because they love helping customers. If you love helping customers, the private space is for you because you're solving problems. You're creating opportunities for people who probably will value you more because you took the time for them. There's definitely more work involved, but once you can master and align yourself with the right private partners like yourself, it can be huge. And there's just, if you like to give value, that's an incredible space to be in.
Yep. Well said. Neil, one more, I think, here before we go into, I'm going to double down on the bonus question today.
Okay. Our last question for you is, what do you love most about the mortgage industry? Before even asking that, I want to say, did you love the other industries you were in prior to being in this? Because
Yes.
I feel like, you're that, yeah.
I did.
Passionate person.
You know what? I just got to see, I just went to a retirement party for one of my Rolla Page colleagues.
Yeah.
And, some of those people in that room, I've, obviously stayed in, again, the beautiful thing about social media and seen at conferences. But some of those people I haven't seen for 10 years. And it was instant hugs and it was, just relation. I bumped into them in the PEI airport this summer.
Oh, wow.
They were on a golf trip and I got to have a reunion there with them. When somebody works with me, they can never really shake me. I just got together with my colleagues from the Toronto Maple Leafs and we just had dinner and regrouped after a long time.
Nice.
So, all I wish is there was more hours in the day and more days in the week so that I could regroup with everybody. I've loved everywhere I've worked. I'm trying to think of a position where I wasn't okay, I found one. I worked on a factory. I lasted 2 weeks in a factory. I worked with this woman. She reminded me a lot of Roseanne Barr. We played a lot of name games. Remember the name provinces that start with A, name provinces. It was a grind because the monotony almost killed me. Having to, punch out for a 15-minute bathroom break and then for a 20-minute lunch break, the monotony. Some people crave that kind of environment. I most certainly don't.
Structure.
I love to wake up and not really know what my day is, has unfold. And sometimes it's frustrating because you have a to-do list and it doesn't get accomplished.
Yeah.
And you're like, what did I do with my day? But I love something that's forever changing. And this mortgage space is forever changing. Just as soon as I figure it out, it all changes again.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great place for those who fear boredom.
Yep.
And I think that's why I'm happiest here is because, there's never a boring day.
Something's always going nuts.
Yeah. And it's like a giant high school. Once you really spend the time getting to know everybody,
Oh, yeah.
it is, it's a very big industry, but a very small industry too. Yeah. And when you make those connections, you get to know everybody and look after everybody. And it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. So to wrap up here, I want to dive back into your time with the Maple Leafs. I'm a diehard Maple Leafs fan. Neil's a Senators fan, so we won't touch on that.
Yeah.
But so
two great teams.
Yeah,
great teams.
Very political answer.
Political answer. Yeah.
So what was your role in marketing there with the Maple Leafs?
So I actually worked for our foundation.
Okay.
Back then it was called Go Kids Go, the Leafs Fund.
Oh, cool.
And my job was to run team events. So everything from casino night to have a heart dinner where the players served dinner. Casino night, they were all the casino table hosts. And the skate, the Leaf skate for Easter seals. So usually a partnered charity. We were always raising money for the community. We would also do team signings. So I would go down after one of the practices and lay out with the community services team all the pucks and sticks and jerseys to get signed. And then, we did a lot of doling that out to the community for other third-party events. So a lot of events. It was mostly events back then. But the hours were crazy. I think I would go in at like 7:30 a.m., work the traditional work day, but then I would stay for games and meet with the wives. And because back then there was a lot of wife hosting events and alumni events as well. And then obviously, stay for the whole game. I started the actual first 50-50 raffle at the Leafs. That was my baby.
No way.
Yeah, back then it was buy tickets from the dollar store. And all my friends were the volunteer sellers. They didn't get paid. We just had them around with aprons all through the arena. Back then, I think the jackpot would be like $3,000. Now it's like 300 or something. OLG now took it over. Okay. So that's probably one of my biggest pride pieces. It was a really, really fun job. Yeah. Lowest paid job I've ever had.
I'm not surprised to hear that at all.
And here's a fun fact. I would go down to the NHL meetings in the U.S. and get to meet with all the other teams. And so people in similar positions like myself. And then I really found out how low paid I was.
Wow.
So the Leafs is one of the richest organizations with the lowest paid staff. But you know what? Here's the thing. I remember when I was being interviewed for that job, I was about to take a $14,000 pay cut to take it. And I just couldn't. I mean, here I was growing. I was young. I was trying to accelerate my career. And I remember the HR person saying, I said, yeah, but you're getting experience with me. I already have experience, whereas mostly you hire interns and then they graduate. And she goes, yeah, we don't hire for experience. We hire for attitude. Which meant you got to really want to work for the Leafs.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I do think I benefited them because some people were super fans and would come out to events and they would glaze over as soon as they got around their favorite player.
Sure.
And the players didn't really have that. I didn't have a fan effect with the players. Yeah. I grew to love them and I grew to love the sport while I worked there. But like any industry, I didn't know anything about hockey when I started there. I didn't know anything about real estate when I started at Roller Page, and I didn't know anything about mortgages when I started in mortgages. Yep. But you can very quickly learn on site. And I think that made me better for the Leafs because, I wasn't there as a fan. I was there to help an organization grow and do great things.
Was it Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, the ownership at the time, or was it Rogers and Bell already?
It was. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It was. Yeah.
Cool.
And Ken Dryden was my boss.
Oh, wow. Right on.
That was really fun. He's fantastic. Him and his wife are incredible.
Cool.
And he likes to write. And my background was PR. So we love to write together. I just worked with the most incredible people. Cool. They're, again, you seek out these like-minded people. I also, because it wasn't a great paying job, I did the off-ice hockey tour. So in the weekends all through the summer, on top of my Monday to Friday job, I would go to every small town festival in Ontario and work like a carnival person, running slap shots and running the inflatables and everything else. Yeah. But the time I got with my colleagues living in motorhomes and small motels across the province was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I bet. I'm sure you did a lot of that with your kids growing up too. Did both your kids play hockey?
They do.
Up? Yeah.
My daughter still plays competitive hockey.
Very cool.
She's 16. My son actually is turning 20 in January, and he's at McMaster University, and he just joined a beer league.
Amazing.
So, I mean, I know we all think our kids are going to go to the NHL. For me, it's like any activity I put my kids in, I wanted them to be able to partake in it as an adult and feel comfortable doing so. And so I love that he's, he took a break from it for about 2 years, and now he's back and he just loves it.
Yeah. I can say the same thing. It's taught me so many lessons in business, sales, teamwork, and all those things, team building. I'm 39 years old and I still play every Sunday with the team now. So, and absolutely love it.
I started ball hockey this past year.
Oh, amazing. Ball hockey is tough. Ball hockey is tough on the body. A lot of starts and stops.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually extra tough when you don't really know the game. And then people are, you watch your kids play hockey all the time. How do you not know? And I'm like, watching and playing are two different things. Plus offside's completely different. But But yeah, it's tough. And how can arenas be so cold in winter yet so hot in the summer?
Oh my God, it's crazy. The sweat playing ball hockey. Yeah,
crazy.
I did that for one summer and that was enough. But, okay, so bonus question to wrap up. Just going back to the Leafs again. Do you have a favorite player, past and present?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a few for different reasons. Ty Domi was a lot of fun because Ty Domi definitely got everything he wanted all the time. And I love to not give him what he wanted all the time. So he would always show up to events. Like he would sneak in the back door away from signings and not sign. And, we would have to drag him out to do them and stuff. And, but the media loved him and looked after him. But I think he got a kick out of me because I would always spar with him and give him a bit of a challenge. So he was a lot of fun to interact with. Oh my gosh, Curtis Joseph. I think Gary Roberts was probably my real favorite. I have a lot of respect for the older players. They were older back then because they grew up in that true hockey environment where they were grassroots fundraising. They understand the community and the giving back part of the hockey culture. And, hockey's evolved over the time. I was only there a short time, but I got to see it change dramatically. And when you're bringing players in from other countries that haven't grown up the same way of selling oranges or selling apples at a Tim Hortons or doing all the things, showing up in your suit and tie when you're like 6 years old at the arena. Not all that space is the same. And I got the luxury of playing with the Raptors, like working with the Raptors too. Very different cultures, right? A lot of those players didn't grow up in that fundraising environment and giving back environment. And some of them definitely embraced it, but some of them had a harder time. So the older players, I worked very close with Daryl Sittler and Wendell Clark and the alumni. And I loved working with the alumni and hearing the old stories. And I was only there a short time, but when I left, Sittler and they all gave me these very generous gifts. Wow. So I have some really cool signed memorabilia that you would just eat up, I'm sure. And the alumni was just incredible too. So I loved our alumni events. Like they would do their own dinners and stuff like that. And we'd sell tickets for people to come and see the alumni. But the stories and the legacy of hockey is pretty incredible. Yeah. Lots of different favorites for different reasons.
That's awesome. I know my family's going to get a kick out of you saying Ty Domi there because Ty Domi was the first Maple Leafs jersey I had as a kid. I used to wear number 28 playing minor hockey growing up as well. So, and it's cool to see his son Max playing with the Leafs now. So.
Back to the point of teams, everybody had a purpose on that team, right? Ty very much knew his purpose. Yeah. Everybody knew their purpose. I think the funniest thing about, as I said, I didn't really know much about hockey when I entered that space. And my husband at the time was very frustrated when all of a sudden I wanted to watch every game and comment all the way through it. But it was my job. I had to know how their game went because the next morning I had to face them. And I had to know, did they have a good game or a bad game? What's the rapport going to be like? How are they going to deal with the media the next day? Are they going to want to sign anything? Yeah. Are they going to show up for the event? I also, because I was greeting their wives and the tension in the wives' lounge sometimes, the stress carries into that environment as well. And we did lots of things like we did a calendar with, back then, I don't think it exists anymore, sadly, but we used to take pictures of the whole family, the kids, the dog, the wife, and put it into this calendar and then sell the calendar. Things like that have died, which are sad because I feel like that still had that small town hockey feel to it. And yeah, hockey's become a whole nother industry and another beast over the years.
Absolutely.
100%.
Anything else, Neil?
No, that's it.
I think that's it. Veronica, thank you so much for joining us. That was fantastic.
Thanks for having me. It was great to chat with you guys and great to be on your own turf.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, it's Neil Andrino, your co-host and your co-founder at Keystone Capital and Director of Investor Relations. I'm also a real estate agent, real estate investor, and business owner.
And your co-host here, Ryan McNeil. I'm the co-founder and president of Keystone Capital Group. Keystone Capital Group is licensed under the Mortgage Regulations Act of Nova Scotia, license number 3000549, and through FCMB, license number 88799. And keep in mind, the views of this podcast are for informational purposes only and is not financial advice.